So let's start with common ground. And this really came out of the Harvard Negotiating Project with a book called Getting to Yes. But, you know, the book's old. It's 25 or 30 years old. But I can tell you it works. It's sort of my preferred technique. It's about interests and not positions. So we're not going to get positional. You got to pay me, you know, $1 million for the house. Okay, I understand your thinking there. Help me understand why that's important, right? So you want to get to what are you trying to accomplish and what's important for the person. And this one is really big on seek to understand first before you go for any type of solution. So there's a lot of learning, understanding, conversation before we get to the negotiation, okay? And that may seem like you're wasting time, but if you truly understand where the other person is coming from, being able to craft a solution that works for them and for you is far more powerful. I think the benefit here is when you get done with a collaborative process, you have a deal that is stable, balanced, and no force was used to generate it. And that means it's going to last. If you've used force to generate a deal of any type, it's unstable intrinsically. For those of you that have a significant other, and if you used force to get something one way or the other that you liked, you know you're going to pay the price later for that. And so sometimes it's a powerful technique to get people back to rationality is go through their best available alternative to a negotiated solution and make sure they understand it. The other technique you use in this methodology, and I find this one really important, is the logical consequence of their position. The logical consequence of their position. So they go, I need $1 million for their house. All right. So what happens if we do that? I already told you I can only afford 900,000. Well, then you can't buy it. Well, right. Probably I'm not your buyer and you'll have to go to the market and find somebody else. What if I tried to do $1 million? Well, it'd be too much debt. You'd be eating macaroni and cheese for 3 years. Probably true. Yep. I mean, in other words, the idea is sometimes I take a ridiculous position and you just ask, what's the logical consequence of that position? Run them through that and they go, well, that doesn't work, right? And adversarial is a view that there's winners and losers in negotiations. So it's that first position that I talked about. It's an adversarial process with winners and losers where one person dominates the other. One winner, one loser, that's it. The first was we can both win, right? And there's books about win-win negotiating and so forth. And I'm not big on using that phrase. I just want to find we've met both of our common interests and it's a stable deal. That's really what we're after here. But adversarial, you're going to see a lot of techniques. The flinch is important in an adversarial negotiation. No matter what price they mention, you flinch. The other one that people use is deadlines. I need the offer by Friday at 5 o'clock or we're done, right? I can tell you in a couple of decades of negotiating, Friday at 5 o'clock never actually means Friday at 5 o'clock, ever. Almost ever. Almost never. So deadlines are arbitrary. They use them to put pressure on you to get a deal done. You can essentially ignore them. Once people have decided to do a deal, they can always find a way to make the money work. So let's just put that to the side for the moment and let's keep working, right? So call out what they're using and it neutralizes it, okay? The other great one, and I see CEOs do this to themselves all the time, which is negotiate with yourself. In fact, it is one of my most common phrases when I'm coaching a CEO on a negotiation. I'm like, stop negotiating with yourself. So they go, well, we're thinking about offering $2 million over 5 years, but I don't think they're going to take it. So I'm going to offer $5 million. And I'm like, stop. You're negotiating with yourself. Put the offer out there and see what they say. Another one that you'll see people use is expectation setting going into the negotiation. And what they're trying to do is set your basis so that you feel like you're winning when you're not really winning. The other one is mirroring their physical presence. So mirror them physically, feels empathetic to the other party, right? So if they're doing this, you go, look, there's got to be more than that. Like, do what they're doing. You'll mirror them and they'll feel like you get them physically. You don't even have to say anything. Their arms are crossed, you cross your arms. Arms are open, open them. You're mirroring them. But then you want to mirror them verbally as well, because that what you need for them to hear when they're doing that is, I get your issue, right? So you go, you're right. MBAs have stolen family firms for hundreds of years. You're right. People like me sometimes do that. You're right. You know, so they go, huh, he's actually hearing me. He gets it. He understands what I'm saying, right? And your goal is, at the end, you could summarize what they said. So what I heard you say was, people like me steal companies like yours, blah, 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 blah. And they go, yeah, that's right. At that point, they realize that you got them. And now you can proceed. Okay. So you got to hear them. And if there's energy like this, you got to get past the energy or you can't have a conversation. So you've got to use these techniques before you get to a real negotiation. If they're in high energy, it's got to get out of the room before you can actually have a real conversation. If anything I say is not fair, stop me. If anything I say is not fair, stop me. Because what implies is, after I've said things and they've not stopped me, they've accepted it. It's fair. We've agreed it's fair because he didn't stop me. Okay. So it's a very powerful, you seem reasonable, and it's also a very powerful technique. There is pressure on both sides of the deal to make the deal. Everybody thinks all the pressure is on their side to make the deal. That is absolutely wrong. Both sides have pressure. And sometimes, to help myself with that, I go, let me be them for a minute. Why did they need to make this deal happen? And I go, the salesperson's got to make, it's the end of the quarter. They got to make their more quarterly quota. You know, he's probably got bills that are due. He needs to pay him. He knows he's going to make a commission on this. Blah, blah, blah. He's the top salesperson. He wants to continue being the top salesperson. He's got inventory on the lot that's been sitting there and he wants to move it. He doesn't want to order me a car. He wants to sell the car on the dang lot, even if it's at a lower price. Like, all of that pressure is on the other side of the equation when they do the nibble. And you go, you know what? I'll wait. And now they got a piece of inventory that they had sold. You're like the pen in your hand. And because they nibbled, they blew the deal. And watch them go, tell you what if I give you the pinstriping and undercoat for $400 instead? Now we're talking, right? So they'll still make some money and you might give it to them. But they have a lot of pressure to get their deal done. So it's not only in a nibble circumstance, it's in all across the negotiation. You got to remember, the other side has pressure. And this is when I'm awake the night before a big negotiation, this is what I'm doing in my brain. All right, what are the three most likely moves that they're going to make? And what are my three potential responses to their moves? Which one's optimal? And then how do they respond to that? And then how do I respond to that? So I run the move, counter move 3 deep on their three primary moves. So when they go, higher authority, I already know exactly what I'm going to do. I already know exactly what I'm going to do when they pull higher authority. So it's seamless for me. It's almost like I thought about it before. Well, yeah, I did, because a lot of it's predictable. Also, where are my gives? What's important to them? How I'm going to tee them up. So good negotiation, you've almost pre-scripted 80% of that conversation. And here's the reason why you go 3 deep. Because nobody goes 3 deep. Nobody does that. Everybody goes 1. Some do 2. Nobody goes 3. You go 3, you will have an amazing advantage going into the negotiation, because you'll basically see where the negotiation is going to go. So if you want to end the negotiation over time, you've got to shrink your concessions over time, and they've got to pace out. So I might give the 5 fairly quickly. I take longer to give the 3, and I'm going to make you pull that 2 out of my skin, which makes you think, what's the chance I get another 1 out of this guy? Probably 0, right? Maybe, but a long time and really hard, not worth it. We're done. If I go 4 or 2, 4, 6, you go, I'm going to keep doing this until they stop giving, right? So really be thoughtful about the size, the magnitude, and the pace of your because it is like a subliminal communication that we're reaching the end of negotiation or not. Framing an alternative choice. Would you rather do this, or would you rather have this? They'll go both. And you go, no, I'm making you make a choice. Like, pick one, right? That gives you a lot of information in that conversation. I talked about knowledge and asymmetry before, about how they know things that you don't know. But the key on this that I really didn't touch on last time is I really spend a lot of time thinking about, what do I know that they don't know that's important? That's a really valuable thing. If I know something that they don't know that's perhaps negative, or that something's really valuable to me, and I don't want them to know it, that's important in it. So think about what they might know that you don't know, and then think a lot about what you know that they don't know. It's important as you go into a negotiation. So time, shape of money, super important. If you can push, you can play with money coming in faster, money coming in slower or out slower. And that can be so if they've got a magic number in their head, you can use that judo like to get a deal that's highly advantageous to you. When you're them, you name their biggest fear. You name their biggest fear in the negotiation. So you go, $5 million, blah, 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 overtime, blah, 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 blah. And you go, if I was you, my biggest fear would be that I'm not going to pay you. And you'd be concerned that you will have sold your company and you'll never actually get all this money and you'll have been screwed. And you watch, they'll go, well, yeah, that's right. So I understand that. We're going to take care of that for you. We're going to make sure that the contract makes sure that you're taken care of. They'll go, holy moly. He basically negotiated against this. You were going to have to negotiate this out anyway. So it's not like you lost anything, frankly, because if it's their number one fear, either you deal with it or there's not going to be a deal. So naming it, like calling it out, and you've all had this, like, somebody's dealing, they finally say, we're heading to the Golden Gate Bridge and we're about to go back. And I go, Pam, I need to tell you something right now. I'm terrified of heights. And you go, no problem. I'll hold your hand. We'll got railings. We'll get you across. And you go, the fact that you get it out there, your number one fear, it disarms it. It takes the power out of it. And so when you do it for them, they go, this person gets me, and they actually are trying to find a deal. So naming the number one fear is really, or even number two or number three, there might be 3 or 4 fears they have, right? Always remember that the fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. The fear of loss is proven in countless economic and psychological and psychoeconomic experiments. There's Nobel Prize work on it. The fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. So if I can protect your downside, that's worth more to a seller, let's say, than giving them a little more upside. And we know companies that if they didn't write the spec, they won't bid it. Right? In government contracting, they go, if we were not in the development of the specification in the first place, we're not even wasting our time bidding it, because we know that our probability of success when we write the spec is 75%, and our probability of success when we didn't write the spec is 20%. So we're wasting no effort going after a pursuit when we didn't write the spec in the first place. Ideally, when you bid, you leave a give in the deal, particularly when you go into procurement, right? So if you've got to have 550 a unit, write it out at 6. Okay. That way you got 50 cents to give to procurement, because remember what they're paid for. Remember what their victory is. Their victory is they got concessions. So the idea is get a concession that you're willing to give lined up in the deal. Now, look, we're going to do flinch, reflect, silence a couple of times before we give them the money. Last one is M&A, and I'll just end on this topic. This is an area where there is a lot of scope for creativity. So there are all kinds of non-financial, we think it's all about the price. Nah, price, time, shape of money, guarantees, consulting contracts, tickets on the 50-yard line, cars. I mean, there's all kinds of junk you can throw into an M&A transaction, because there's really no limit to your creativity here once you understand the other party.